Greetings, YouTube. It's more mental health talk. One of the things I have recently tried to tackle with my therapist has been intrusive thinking. And it is something I've experienced my entire life. And I wasn't able to articulate it. I wasn't able to really frame it as something that existed until relatively recently, because I finally have serotonin in my brain. I finally had the support of a solid therapist who I happen to have a great affection for and respect, until I have my wife here who will listen and will understand when I'm having those bad days, when I'm having sensory overloads, when I just cannot take it anymore and I'm just shutting down. Those things happen some days. Living with somebody with mental illnesses can be draining. Having mental illness can be draining. It can be tiring just to keep going. Just existing from day to day can drain the crap out of you. But one of the things that kind of pulls me down, that keeps me in place, that keeps me from moving forward, are intrusive thoughts. Now, most of my intrusive thoughts are absolutely friggin' absurd. Absolutely absurd. They have no bearing on reality. And I'm not just saying that I'm imagining scenarios that could happen to me. No, I'm not imagining real world scenarios. I'm imagining things that cannot happen. What would happen if I were suddenly the last person on Earth? That's never going to happen. What would happen if electricity suddenly stopped working? That's not going to happen. In a lot of plots of fantasy novels, but not going to happen. What happened if the drugs I'm currently putting into a little bottle so I can take them? I put all my pills into a little bottle and I just chuck the whole thing down and then swallow water. That's how I've always taken mine. I can take as many as 19 pills at a time. I'm very good at it. I think to myself, what happens if I never have access to drugs again? They're in front of me. I'm holding them. They were there yesterday. They're here today. They'll be here tomorrow. And that's the mechanism that my therapist has suggested I try. When I encounter those thoughts, counter argue against them by saying, okay, that didn't happen yesterday. It's not happening now. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And you just keep saying it. And as you keep saying it, and I'm not done with this process, don't get me wrong. It's like every time I start to tune down an intrusive thought, I realize, hey, there's 5 more in the background that I never noticed before. Let's go tune those down too. So yeah, there's a frigging chorus in my head, and I'm just slowly trying to turn each one down till eventually, hopefully, I can silence them, or at least make them just the echoes of absurdity, which is what they are. Now, some of the things I'm worried about are real world, but we have to live with them. Like every time my wife leaves the house, I fear I'll never see her again. Not because she's going to walk out, but because she'll die in a car accident. And the reality is 40,000+ people in America die each year in car accidents. That's a reality. There's nothing I can do to change that. I know she's safe, but I know other people aren't. I know other people were willing to take risks in ways that they shouldn't because they're convinced that they're invulnerable. I can guarantee you they aren't. But that's just the reality that every single time you say goodbye to someone, you may never see them again. I've had it happen. That someone has just died. And I never saw them again. Literally, I said goodbye to somebody on a Friday and I never saw them again. I had a guy who went to break one day on first shift. I saw him in the morning, said hello to him, talked to him chatted for a couple of minutes, and I went home. He went to break on first shift to his truck and he died. No warning, nothing. He was just dead. And one of our guys, unfortunately, was the one that found him. But someone's like, hey, could you go check and see if he fell asleep or something? He wasn't asleep. So That's real, but we have to live with it. All of us are going to leave. All of us have accidents. How many times have you hurt yourself? Not because you wanted to, but because maybe you went a little too fast, you were a little too loose with the safety protocols you should have been using at that minute in time, or something happened that you had absolutely no control over, had never experienced before, and you weren't even aware it could hurt someone. But it happened, and you got hurt, and thankfully you're still here. But it happens all the damn time. I've had well over 100 stitches in my life. I'm good at getting hurt. Though more than half of them weren't from a dog attack, but that wasn't really on me on that one. But those intrusive thoughts keep coming, and I keep talking to them. But you know who I'm talking to? A child. My inner child. Because that's what's going on. It's an anxious, scared child. One raised in a household by a mentally ill drunkard, an abusive alcoholic. Raised in an environment where there was no stability, there was no structure, where literally anything could happen at any time, where there was no patterns, and no matter how much I tried to find them, they didn't exist. Because there aren't patterns of proper functionality inside the head of an alcoholic. So that child came up with scenario after scenario after scenario. I was a Batman long before I even knew what the character's name was. And of course, all those scenarios are wrong. I came up with all of them for nothing. And all of those scenarios echo down through my head through the decades, and they're still wrong. They still don't make any sense. And now I'm trying to turn them down, one at a time. Make that chorus quieter. Silence each one until hopefully I have peace. And it's easier now that I have the mechanism. Now that I know to say, okay, that didn't happen yesterday. It's not happening now. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And I'm not saying it from the perspective of condensation. I'm not humoring, I'm not patronizing that inner child. No, I'm talking directly to them. I'm seeing a scared child who's going, because he was trying to make sense of the world and there wasn't any. That wasn't his fault. People who never should have been parents were parents. And I just have to talk to that kid again and again and again. And reassure him and let him know he's safe. And explain to him that thing that you're thinking about right now didn't happen yesterday, did it? It's not going on right now. Right now it's not going on, is it? And I can tell you right now it's not going to happen tomorrow. And just keep doing that. 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 times. It doesn't matter how many times I have to do it. I just have to keep doing it. And hopefully it'll get easier. So far it has. And hopefully as I tune them down, some of them may just go silent on their own because my brain will finally understand. I'll finally burn in new synaptic pathways that understand that those scenarios that I came up with trying to save myself, trying to stay sane, didn't help us and aren't helping us and won't help us. Not me and not that inner child. And it isn't easy. I don't want to have to do it. Too damn bad. I once read that People who are in therapy are there because there are people in the world that won't go to therapy. Truer words have never been spoken. My parents had gone to therapy before they became parents and had solved the problems that they had. I'd be a happier kid now. I'd be a well-adjusted adult. So I've got to do that work now at 58. That should have happened before I was born, but it wasn't. So here we are. So I'm going to keep talking to that anxious kid as long as I have to. I'm going to be the parent he should have had. The one that doesn't treat him cruelly, doesn't yell at him, doesn't hit him, doesn't torment him. And I'm going to help him to grow up, to be happy, healthy. Well, at least that's the plan.